Next up in our position group preview for the offseason, the linebackers. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast, and you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and sign up today. From there, you'll get news, analysis, one-on-one conversations via text message with me. No apps, no threads, no hashtags, no none of that. It comes straight to you. Your messages come straight to me. Plus, you get bonus content, all kinds of fun stuff, including texts during events, press conferences, games, practices, like the NFL Scouting Combine out here in Indianapolis this week. So I will be texting my insiders from the Scouting Combine. I'll be in the room for all the press conferences. I'll be in the stadium for all the drills. It's going to be a really long week, but a really fun week as well. It is Monday as I'm recording this. Tomorrow on Tuesday, as this episode drops, I'll be getting ready to talk to your general manager, Adam Peters, on Tuesday afternoon. So a lot of fun stuff coming up there. Again, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get that started today. You'll even get a companion document for this linebacker preview episode, as I've been doing for all the preview episodes. I'm David Harrison, credential member in the media, covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation, and I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers and everydayers. I appreciate you for your continued support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. On today's episode, we are diving into the linebacker group for the Washington Commanders, the 2024 NFL Draft, the 2024 free agency picture, all of it as it pertains to the Commanders linebackers. But before we can get into what could be coming, we've got to start with what the team has currently, and that means we need to look at the 2024 roster and the linebackers currently on said roster. And of course, that conversation is going to start with Jamin Davis, getting ready to enter his fourth year in 2024 in the NFL. He's set to make $4.389 million against the Washington Commanders 2024 salary cap. He also carries a $4.389 million dead cap figure, which means trading him, releasing him, any of that stuff, unless you get the trading team to take all of his guarantees, will net the Washington Commanders exactly $0. Brandon Boyer Randall. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. He is on the roster as a futures or with a futures contract worth $795,000, zero dead cap carried with that. And then just recently, the Washington Commanders signing linebacker Keandre Jones. Not sure what the finances are on that contract, but it's not going to be much, I promise you there. So as of right now, that's it. 2024 roster, you've got three linebackers: Jamin Davis, Brandon Boyer Randall, Keandre Jones, all on the roster. Typically, NFL teams carry about 4 to 6 linebackers on their active roster, and really what determines how many they carry is how many they use, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, but also how many they use on special teams. So linebackers are a very, very important part of special teams contributors. So sometimes you'll see teams carry an extra linebacker or two on their special teams roster. Or on their roster just to fill the special teams needs that they may have. And that's where you saw a guy like running back Chris Rodriguez last year came in. And I actually specifically asked the question if he was a guy that could fill that linebacker role or a linebacker type role on a special teams unit. And Nate Katzer, the special teams coordinator at the time, confirmed that to me. So anyway, that's why you tend to see more linebackers. So return candidates, right? Guys that are unsigned heading into the 2024 offseason. Cody Barton obviously leads that list. He turns 28 in November. Played 13 games for the Commanders in 2023, had 121 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, didn't force any fumbles, did recover 1, no sacks and interception, and he had 1 pass defense. 75% of his, or he played on 75% of the Washington Commanders defensive snaps this season. When you compare that to the 63.67% that Jamin Davis played, they both played in 13 games. So obviously Cody Barton getting the more larger share of the work there, but he is an unrestricted free agent. Not sure if this new regime is going to be bringing him back. You also have a guy named Jabril Cox, who is pretty popular among the fan base. He turns 26 in April, played in 10 games in 2023, had 2 total tackles, was with Dallas in 2021 and 2022. And the beginning of 2023, before he was waived in August. And what was interesting there is that he actually had the opportunity, cleared waivers, could have gone back to the Dallas Cowboys practice squad, but he chose to join the Washington Commanders practice squad instead. Now, obviously, Dan Campbell, Joe Witt Jr. were the defensive coordinator and obviously an assistant defensive coach there with the Cowboys. So I don't know if Jabril Cox just didn't feel like he was going to crack that lineup, or, maybe there's some hard feelings there. Not sure what that whole thing is about. So if there are, then maybe he's not going to be all that interested in coming back. But I think Jabril is certainly a player that most Commanders fans would be interested in bringing back. You also have Khaleke Hudson, who's a little bit smaller, a little bit undersized, but has some range, some athleticism. Really liked a lot of things that Khaleke did. Again, so we'll have to see if they decide to bring him back. And then David Mayo, more of a veteran type linebacker. Not sure what his future with the team could be this season and beyond. But those are your 4 unsigned players for 2024 as of right now for the Washington Commanders. And when you look at the overall spending for the Washington Commanders projected for the 2024 salary cap from the linebacker position, you've got $6.124 million allotted to the linebackers right now. That's 30th in the NFL projected for 2024. And again, a lot of contracts could potentially sway that. But just like a lot of these other position groups, I think it's really important to kind of point this out, because a lot of times some of us will look at contracts and look at the amount that a team is spending and say, look at, the Kansas City Chiefs, they spent all this money on this position group, and this team didn't spend anything on that position group. That's probably why. And honestly, we've been going through this, and the floor for a 2023 spender in the playoffs was the Los Angeles Rams. They paid $5.268 million of their cap to the linebacker position. That was 32nd, dead last in the NFL last year, yet they still made the playoffs. The playoff ceiling last year was $34.57 million. That was the Green Bay Packers. That's third most in the NFL. So both of those teams coming out of the NFC, both those teams making the NFL as wild cards, or the NFL playoffs as wild cards. One of them dead last in the league in linebacker spending, one of them third. So again, not really. That's not something that you can kind of take through as empirical and say, okay, you have to spend in order to have good ones. But we'll talk more about spending potentially in drafting moving forward. Cut candidates. I don't have any cut candidates from this group. Again, we've only got the 3. Jamin Davis is entering his 4th season in the NFL. So, I don't think there's any reason to really cut him at this point in time. I know he's not everybody's favorite linebacker in the world, but this team isn't cash strapped. And again, cutting him doesn't save you anything anyway. So no cut candidates out of this group here. So obviously no savings, no adjustment to the amount of cap spending, no adjustment to the amount of cap spent ranking in the 2024 season coming up. So that's where we start things off. That's the current Washington Commanders linebacker group. Now, where can they add? Obviously, they can add through free agency, which free agency will start first. So we're going to start there first. Top 3 free agents to consider, or 3 free agents to consider, rather, coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you go for a run, maybe take a nap, maybe read a good book, watch a good TV show, or show up for a friend in need? A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. But the question is, what do you need more time for? If time was unlimited, how would you go about using it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters most to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Continuing on now, today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, your first view today and every day. Every day is make sure you come back tomorrow. We will have more stuff to talk about. I'm not sure quite yet if we're going to do a position group preview and talk about what Adam Peters talks about the scouting combine. Really, it kind of depends on how much Adam divulges and how conversational he is, right? If there's enough there, then we'll probably do a full episode on what Adam talks about. If not, then we'll kind of play it by ear. But either way, we're going to have some good Commanders content. I hope to deliver on that promise. That's my aim every episode. Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with your local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now we're going to continue our linebacker position group preview here ahead of the offseason for the Washington Commanders, and we're going to do so by turning to some free agent targets. But before we get to those free agent targets, we got to kind of talk about how we're going to gauge what is a good target and what is a bad target, right? And really what that boils down to is how are the linebackers going to be used. Now, typically, when you look at Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr.'s usage of linebackers of the Dallas Cowboys, usually you're looking at 2 or 3 primary linebackers that are used by the team. So you're looking at 2 or 3 guys, not 4 guys, not 1 guy. The 2023 Cowboys, that was Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons. That was Damone Clark. And that was Marquise Bell. In 2022, it was Parsons, Leighton Vander Esch, Anthony Barr, and Clark a little bit in there as well. And then in 2021, it was Parsons, Vander Esch, and Keanu Neal. So 2 of those guys, interesting. Marquise Bell and Keanu Neal were converted safeties that became linebackers and more cover type linebackers. So it's just interesting because right now you have Jamin Davis, who is really your only, if you want to call it, established linebacker, right? He's your most established linebacker. Certainly, again, not everybody's favorite, but he is the guy on your team that has the most experience and the most maybe solidified position. It's unlikely, in my opinion, that the team is going to pick up his 5th-year option. So heading into his 4th year as a first-round draft pick, the team has to pick up or has exercised or declined to exercise his 5th-year option. It's shortly after the NFL draft is the deadline. Typically, we find out in the days leading up to the actual NFL draft beginning. I don't expect, like I said, Jamin Davis's option to be picked up, to be exercised, and that means that he'll play his 4th season this coming year. And then after that, he'll be on track to be an unrestricted free agent, depending on, of course, the team, if he plays well enough and they franchise him, whatever, all that stuff. But when you look at the types of linebackers now, right, you typically have, going back again from the Dallas Cowboys patterns, you have 1 rush linebacker and then you have a couple of coverage linebackers. And what I mean by that is, in 2023, 2022, and 2021, that rush linebacker was Micah Parsons. And in 2023, Micah Parsons had 532 rush snaps. That's 532 times he was rushing the passer on a given snap from the linebacker position. The second most came from Damone Clark, 54 of them. 2022, Parsons led the way with 577. Anthony Barr had 45. 2021, Micah Parsons, 319. Leighton Vander Esch, 47. So it's not even close. You have a rush linebacker, then your other 2 or 3 or 1 on the field are coverage linebackers, right? So 2023, that was Bell, the converted safety, 401. Damone Clark also had 387. So both those guys coverage linebackers. 2022, Vander Esch had 468. Anthony Barr, 363. 2021, Vander Esch, 345. Neal, 338. Parsons did have 295. But again, after 2021, you pretty much see him dedicated to a pass rusher only role. So when you look at this Washington Commanders defense, you have to look at the linebackers. You'd look at Jamin Davis and say, what role does he fit in? Is he a coverage linebacker? Is he a rush linebacker? In 2023, Jamin had 385 pass coverage snaps, right? And he earned himself a 56.5 PFF grade. He had 61 rush snaps and had a 71.6 PFF grade. Now, the body of work here is much higher towards the pass coverage angle than it is the pass rush angle. But when I watch Jamin Davis, when you look at the PFF grade, I think most of you probably will agree that Jamin Davis should probably be more of a rush linebacker than he is a coverage linebacker. Of course, we can debate that all we want, but to me, that's where it seems to make sense. So when we're doing this, we're looking for options that could come in. If Jamin's going to be our rush linebacker, then maybe we're looking for guys who would either challenge him for that rush linebacker position, or if we want to get the most bang for our buck, we kind of plug him in as that top rush linebacker, and we go out there looking for coverage options, or the best of both worlds. Get a guy who can do both. Right now, I'm not saying that Jamin Davis, let's just get this clear right now. I'm not saying that Jamin Davis is Micah Parsons. I'm not saying that Jamin Davis is going to do the same thing as Micah Parsons. He's going to be as successful as Micah Parsons. But I'm saying when you look at Jamin Davis and say, which role are you best suited for in this defense? Is it as a pass rusher or is it as a coverage linebacker? I think Jamin Davis says that he fits best as a rush linebacker. That's what I'm telling you. I'm not telling you Jamin Davis is going to be Micah Parsons. So let's not go that far. Okay. So let's look at some free agent targets now and using that kind of as our guideline for what we are looking for here. And for me, the best option out there, this is no surprise to any everydayers, as we've talked about it already. Patrick Queen, linebacker coming from the Baltimore Ravens, most likely is going to hit the open market. Does not look like the Ravens are going to be able to keep him in-house. He is projected by Spot Track to have a 5-year contract worth $92.6 million in free agency. That's $18.5 million annual average value. That is a Fred Warner comp. Fred Warner, of course, the amazing linebacker from the San Francisco 49ers. PFF's free agent comp for him is Jamie Collins from 2017. In 2017, Jamie Collins signed a 4-year deal worth $50 million. That's $12.5 million annual average value. Patrick Queen turns 25 in August, so he's still fairly young. He was a 2023 Pro Bowler, had 732 coverage snaps. That's second most in the NFL in 2023, and earned a 74.4 PFF grade. Pretty solid. Had 123 rush snaps. That was the seventh most in the NFL among linebackers in 2023, and he earned a 67.8 PFF grade. Not as solid. So you see there, he is more heavily talented towards pass coverage, did that more for Baltimore, did it really well than he is as a pass rusher. So in essence, you keep Patrick Queen, you team him with Jamin Davis, you got yourself a rush linebacker in Jamin, you have yourself a coverage linebacker in Patrick Queen. Now, the acceptable option, typically an older guy because he's only going to be around for a year, 2 years, 3 years. These are the guy that typically a fan will tell me he's too old to be on this team. Well, he's not too old to be on this team for a couple of years, maybe even 1 year. He's too old if you're looking for 5 to 10 years, but not every free agent, guys, can be a 5 to 10 year guy. Okay, so acceptable option, Lavonte David from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, full disclosure here, Lavonte David has recently gone on record and saying that he's almost to the point where he says he would almost rather retire than not play for the Buccaneers. Okay, but that's almost. And he also did say, but the numbers have to make sense, the business has to make sense. So if the Buccaneers come disrespectful, Lavonte might say, hey, look, I love y'all, but if you're going to treat me like this, I'm going to go find somewhere else. That somewhere else could be the Washington Commanders. Projected contract comp is Carlos Dansby from 2014. In 2014, Dansby signed a 4-year deal worth $24 million at $6 million on average. Again, Lavonte probably not looking for a 4-year deal anyway, so you're probably looking at 1 year, $6 million or so. Lavonte turns 35 in January, and yes, he's older, but look, he's missed no more than 4 games in any season in his entire career so far. Now, of course, any year could be the year, got it, but so far he's been very, very available. Last year, 135 tackles, 4.5 sacks, played next to a rush linebacker in Devin White. So Lavonte David, while Devin White and some other guys were pairing up to rush, he was getting 630 coverage snaps, 6th most in the National Football League with a 67.6 PFF grade. He had 90 rush snaps, 17th in the league with a 71 PFF grade. So he's certainly got a better pass rush grade than he does coverage grade, but he does a little bit of both, a little bit of that veteran opportunity, veteran leadership as well. So if you go out there, you sign him and you draft a guy, say on day 2, then you got Lavonte, you got a day 2 rookie, you got Jamin, pretty solid, group of 3 there to start building around, see what you have at the end of the year and go from there. The risky pick, linebacker Jordan Brooks from the Seattle Seahawks. His projected contract, 4 years, $45.35 million. It's $11.3 million on average in annual salary. Devondre Campbell out of Green Bay is getting about the same. And again, Green Bay paying their linebackers amongst the most in the NFL in 2023. His PFF free agent comp is Bobby Okereke, 2023, 4 years, $40 million, $10 million a year, average annual value. Jordan Brooks turns 27 in October. He did tear his ACL in week 17 of 2022, so not that long ago, but he was able to return in week 1 of 2023, which is amazing. And he went on to have a fairly solid season. 412 coverage snaps, ranked 39th in the NFL. He ended up with a 59.9 PFF grade. That's not very good, but he also had 43 pass rush snaps. That's 52nd in the NFL, but he did finish with an 85 overall PFF grade. So to me, Jordan Brooks looks a lot like Jamin Davis, where he's not getting a lot of pass rush snaps compared to his coverage snaps, but he's doing a lot better in those pass rush snaps. Now, to me, that makes Jordan Brooks, Jamin Davis, you're both battling out for that starting rush linebacker job and also maybe the opportunity to get a new contract. So I bring Jordan Brooks in on a 1-year deal. Jamin Davis is on a 1-year deal. And I tell them both, you're battling for a starting position, which whenever he gets it, if you perform during the season, maybe we ink you to a longer-term deal next offseason. We'll see how it goes. But if you do that and you don't sign another coverage linebacker or 1 or 2 coverage linebackers, that means you definitely need a dip in the linebacker pool in the NFL draft. And that thing is pretty shallow. We'll go over some day 1, 2, and 3 targets coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we will do that coming up thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. And FanDuel wants you to get buckets with your first bet on America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers to FanDuel, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. For the NBA Finals, the NBA currently raging forward. The Eastern Conference's Boston Celtics are plus 230 favorites to win the entire darn thing, while the Western Conference's Denver Nuggets carry the second highest odds at plus 440 right now at this moment. Meanwhile, in the NFL, the San Francisco are the current favorites to win Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans next year with a plus 500 line, and the Kansas City Chiefs are favored out of the AFC with a plus 650 line to win their third straight Super Bowl. Would be the first team in NFL history to do that. Of course, they're also the first franchise in NFL history to win back-to-back Super Bowls. So why not be the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams, your NFL players and teams with FanDuel. Use quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Wrapping up this episode today of Locked On Commanders, looking at NFL draft targets, linebackers that the Washington Commanders could target in the NFL draft. And we just went over the free agents. We've already been over the 2024 roster at the beginning of the season. Now let's look at some new incoming NFL rookies to be. These are the guys that we're going to be looking at here for the most part. I think all of these guys are here in Indianapolis for the Scouting Combine. We're going to look at least at most of them, if not all of them, here in the coming week. And we're going to start here on day one, and we're going to look at Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. Now, this is an interesting group because people honestly kind of have their, and I think while some people have Cooper as their number one linebacker, some also have NC State's Payton Wilson as their number one linebacker. Now, Daniel Jeremiah has Edgerrin Cooper at Texas A&M as his number 20 overall prospect, his entire top 50 and the top linebacker in the group. Meanwhile, PFF has Edgerrin Cooper number 49 on their own big board. Edgerrin Cooper is a 6'3", 230-pound linebacker. He has an 86 in the 2023 college season, right? Had an 86.4 rush grade from PFF. That was 16th best in the nation, and an 85.5 coverage grade. That was 18th best in the nation. Those are pretty high marks. And we're talking about college football linebackers. This isn't 32 starting linebackers in the NFL. We're talking about hundreds of linebackers here, guys. So to be 16th and 18th in both of those, that's pretty solid performance in 2023 by Edgerrin Cooper. Mock draft database consensus has him going number 60 overall. So again, kind of hot and cold on Edgerrin Cooper, just depending on where you are. And I keep wanting to say Edgerrin James because I'm old and I'm dating myself here. So I put Payton Wilson in the day two category. However, I know some of you guys are going to prefer Payton Wilson over Edgerrin Cooper and say he's a day one guy more than Edgerrin is. I get it. Look, I got to put him in a slot, so don't take it too personally if your favorite guy is not on the day one slot and your favorite guy is actually in the day two slot. Either way, both these guys are really good prospects. Right now, Payton Wilson is number 47 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, and he is 28th in PFF's big board. So PFF sees Payton Wilson about 20 spots higher than Edgerrin Cooper, but Daniel Jeremiah got him 2 spots below. It's just, again, it's depending on who you are. 6'4", 238 pounds, 76.8 rush grade is 60th in college football last year. 90.4 coverage grade is 8th. And so I think this is kind of where, it's kind of a pick your poison type of deal, right? So if you got Jamin Davis playing rush, then obviously you need a coverage linebacker, and you could go after Payton Wilson, who has the higher coverage grade from this last season over Edgerrin Cooper. Obviously, the tape needs to support that assertion as well. But you call Payton Wilson a coverage linebacker, while you call Edgerrin Cooper more of a Mike linebacker because he can rush and he can cover, so he can stay on the field no matter what the situation is. Where Payton Wilson, if you're in a straight up rush situation, you may need to pull him off for a more pass rush savvy type of guy. Maybe a guy like Junior Colson, who's actually more of a coverage guy as well. But he's number 45 on Daniel Jeremiah's list. So he's actually higher than Payton Wilson on Daniel Jeremiah's list, but 65th by PFF. So Colson comes in behind Cooper and Wilson. So again, hot and cold linebacker class, right? 6'3", 247 pounds. Junior Colson coming out of Michigan had a 60.7 pass rush grade. That's 418th in the NCAA football standings. That's not very good. 83.4 coverage grade was 26th. So obviously a much better coverage linebacker than he is a pass rush linebacker, at least from what we saw in Michigan this last season. Now we turn to day 3, and I got 3 options here. There's only one on the screen for you, but I'm going to tell you about all 3. The first one is Michael Barrett, another Michigan guy. And look, I'm an Ohio State fan. I don't hide this from you guys. So if I'm for an Ohio State guy to have 2 Michigan linebackers on this slide, in this conversation, that tells you what I think about these two guys, right? Number 146 on the PFF ranking. Michael Barrett is 6 foot tall, so not very tall for a linebacker, 239 pounds. 92.3 rush grade, was second best in the entire nation. 72 coverage grade, was 129. So this is a rush linebacker that you're looking at here in Michael Barrett. So this is a guy maybe on day 3. You bring him in, he's a little bit shorter, but hey, man, if he fills that role, you put him with Patrick Queen, put him with maybe Payton Willis, and you get yourself Michael Barrett. You tell Jamin Davis, hey, bro, you got to find a way to fit in where you can get in, because all these dudes are coming after your spot on the roster. Another day 3 option, J.D. Bertrand out of Notre Dame. He's number 153 on the PFF board here. 6'1", 233 pounds, 82.6 rush grade, 29th in the country, 70.5 coverage grades, was 158th in the country, but 70.5 is not really all that terrible. So you kind of have a little bit of both, more of a rush guy than anything, but you certainly have a little bit of talent across the board. And then I do have an Ohio State guy here, day 3, Tommy Eichenberg, who actually ranks higher on the PFF board than Michael Barrett and J.D. Bertrand do. I've got him ranked below those two, but hey, like I said, everybody sees him differently, right? Tommy Eichenberg, number 101 on the PFF big board, 6'2", 239, so a little bit more of a bigger linebacker profile than the other two guys. 65.3 pass rush grade, 286 in the country, 52.8 coverage grade, 699th in the country. So he definitely has some things to work on, but could be a special teams contributor for you early while he continues to grow into whatever role you're going to have him filling in the National Football League. So those are the NFL draft prospects that I'm looking at in the linebacker group as of right now. That's not all of them, of course. We've got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. There's a bunch of guys out there that we just can't fit every single person. Latu on the board. So we can't put them all out there. So just giving you a little bit of a flavor from each day of the upcoming NFL draft. And of course, as the NFL Scouting Combine gets started here tomorrow, we'll meet the defensive linemen on Wednesday, and then the rest of the groups get going Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all throughout the weekend. I will be here for that. I will be here for you coming up tomorrow. Again, depending on what Adam does, depending on what Adam Peters says to us at the podium, we'll talk at least a little bit about that, but we may talk a lot about it depending on what happens and what is said. So come back tomorrow. We will have content regardless, about 22 to 28 minutes as we always do. In the meantime, you got questions or comments, throw them down in the YouTube comment section or text me directly as a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to text me, and sometimes more importantly, receive text from me, especially during days where I'm at the Scouting Combine, like I will be on Tuesday. Don't forget to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind. I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.